Hello there and welcome. It is time to talk today somewhat about list building, um, but more so uh, this video I end up going through different lists that I've played and as well as some of the lists that I've seen online quite commonly on say Discord or Slack. So this video is really more so geared towards newer players, giving you some example lists. And as I do that, I'll also mention what squad packs the units come from. And especially at the beginning, I start off with some lists that only require the core box plus one squad pack. But near the end, there's a couple lists that involve the core box plus some characters from two different squad packs. But hopefully this video can give you some starter lists to try out, and then you can see what characters from those lists you like, and uh, and branch out from there. It is currently March 11th, so um, we've had some stuff spoiled for, or not spoiled, revealed for some upcoming boxes that'll be coming out in April. And we've had Ewoks and Vader Squad, Luke Squad come out recently, but I in this video I want to just focus on basically the prequel era stuff, because we don't quite have enough, I think, for the Rebel faction. We've had Moff Gideon's box revealed, so that could obviously go well with Darth Vader's box, but I haven't tried that out. I don't think many people have quite yet. So I thought I would just focus on kind of everything before that, but include Plo Koon's box because he really goes with what's come out so far. He kind of caps off the prequel era stuff, other than Hondo, who was also revealed, but his box isn't revealed, and we've been told that he could go well with Cad Bane. But anyway, this will be geared a bit towards newer players who are looking to come up with their first strike teams. And so at the core, we'll start with the Mandalorians, because this is a strike team that could be played, that synergizes well right out of the core box. So to start with, it's basically just all the Mandalorians, and then Lord Maul and Ahsoka Tano. They're both very keyword independent, so they make good primaries for that squad because the Mandos just kind of synergize within themselves, and then the primaries can just do what they do on their own. And especially Maul, I feel, is important because he has sustained by rage, which is, while he is not wounded, when he would spend force to use an ability, he may suffer damage equal to the cost instead. So both of these primaries bring 3 force, which is on the lower side. It's not the lowest, but it's kind of, I guess, considered kind of average. But then Maul, he has very good active abilities that cost force, but instead of using the force that he brings, he can take damage instead. So basically kind of giving you free force but using his health. And personally, I've found the Mandalorians to be quite force hungry. They have active abilities as well, including jetpack. And then the thing is, the Mandalorians are stronger together. When they make a move action, if they're within 2 of another Mandalorian, then they make a focus action. But this is reactive, so if they're wounded, that costs 1. And also if they're wounded, then jetpack costs 2. So as soon as they start getting wounded, they can start to get pretty heavy on the force use, because all of them have the jetpack, and Mandalorians are stronger together, which you are likely to want to rely on. Now, what has happened, a lot of people will actually switch and put Bo-Katan with the Super Commandos and Gar Saxon with the Clan Kryze. This is because she has a kind of an aura, some of us serve a higher purpose. So allied Mandalorians within range 3 of the unit contesting one or more objectives get protection and steadfast. So that helps them to not take as much damage and also be harder to shove off points. And so she wants to be up where the fighting is, just like the Mandalorian Super Commandos, who are better in melee, while Gar Saxon kind of has abilities that are good for his ranged attack. He's got the longer range of all the Mandalorians with range 5. And then sharpshooter and ignoring cover if he's made a focus action. So he could sit back with Clan Kryze, which are also a little more on the ranged focus side with sharpshooter and more dice at range. So that's the starting point for Mandalorians. The other, like I said, the primaries are basically just the ones that don't rely on a lot of synergy. So sometimes Ahsoka could also have Luminara subbed in. She is Galactic Republic and has the one ability that looks for that, but otherwise her abilities are don't worry about keywords. So once per turn, when an enemy unit becomes wounded after the effect is resolved when an allied character may dash. That's a strong one for a strike team that is going to be trying to wound lots. And then the other side of it is when an enemy character wounds an allied unit, then the character in another allied unit may recover 3. And then if you have someone in reserve, then you can peek at the top card of your order deck before choosing to activate that unit, or choosing it or the one in reserve. So she makes for another good option in that. Although I've seen that Mother Talzin is another option that people go with. She's a little more Dathomirian focused, but if you've got Maul as the other primary, then she can look for him for giving out that dash. She still reacts to any of her allies being wounded with that dash and 5 dice ranged attack. So those are some options there. Now, when the core box came out, General Kenobi's box also came out at the same time, and so that includes General Obi-Wan Kenobi, Clone Commander Cody, and the 212th clone troopers. And so that was easily paired with General Anakin Skywalker Captain Rex and the 501st Clone Troopers. So an easy, at the beginning, that was a out of the box team to put together. Personally, I, well, the 501st clones are not great. So these days, I would say that they get replaced by the ARF troopers, if you have them available, because they have much stronger. Well, they have coordinated fire expose, which is a big one. They have this extra lay low innate on their hunkers there, if they're hunkered. And then their tree starts with pin push, which is a good combination, as well as just having a better attack expertise than the 501st. Having only one hit, becoming one crit when it's 4+. They start with the pin, 2 damage, but then the shove is on 3. Step 3 instead of step 2. So when I started playing this, the 501st definitely felt like attacks for bringing Anakin Skywalker, who brings less squad points, but more force. And I was also trying to get the most out of him, since he you would assume is kind of higher value, because he brings less points. So he can be quite force hungry if you are leaning into, I'm going to end this, and trying to make sure that he wounds somebody on every activation that he has. So I'm circling back to him recently, because I've learned a lot about how to play better and what to focus more on. So trying to explore options with him. But again, this would be simply core box plus 1 squad. And I've seen, I think some people have paired his squad with Mace Windu's box as well, because Mace Windu brings a lot of force, so that kind of enables him to use however much he wants. Although then you are stuck bringing the 501st. Now, on Kenobi's side of things, Clone Commander Cody is generally seen to be not great. I liked him at first, and I do think that his reroll ability for the clone trooper supporting characters is nice, and it helps them get further down their tree. But unfortunately, once you see that mobility is a big factor, he just doesn't have the action economy to help him really shine, because he has defensive maneuver just like all of the other clones in this list, but you need to do a focus action in order to get the extra dice from sharpshooter, and yeah, that's obviously what he wants to be doing, because he only starts with a base of 6 dice. He has 6 steps on the tree, so he really wants to be rolling a lot more dice and trying to snipe people, but in this, you need to be getting to different objectives as well. So if you're foregoing your move action, which allows you to do the full advance, that becomes an issue. So a common squad that you'll see is Kenobi with Rex and 2/12, or the clone commandos. Um, that'll be a common squad, especially in premier formats. That squad, yeah, you pretty much pair with um, any of the other Republic options, pretty much. Like you'll see that with Mace's box or Plo Koon or Padme. However, Obi-Wan Kenobi really leans into the hunkers on his team with his identity, which um, I'll let you take a look at because it's pretty long and wordy. But basically, if you have a hunker and you get attacked, you can get rid of the hunker and dash, do a recover and dash. So that allows you to dash back onto the objective if you've been pushed off. And so that's where he really goes well with any of the early clones. So his box, Anakin's squad, Mace's squad, although Pawns doesn't have defensive maneuver. Anyone can take cover action, of course, to get a hunker, but it's easier if it's part of that extra dash that other people get. And then the commandos also have it. But then once you get to Plo Koon's box, that's when they stop having defensive maneuver, and that turns into making a focus action instead of getting a hunker as part of that dash ability. So yeah, he really spends a lot more time with those clones that have the defensive maneuver, although he can work with others. Now, the last team that would involve, or I guess the last set of teams that could involve just having the core box, a squad from the core box, and then one other box. At the time of release, Count Dooku's box was also available, and so that includes Count Dooku, Jango Fett, and the Magna Guards. And that is considered a very strong box, very flexible. I've seen that people are using that squad as is in strike teams where the other squad is not Separatist Alliance. The obvious pairing is to put him in a Separatist Alliance full strike team, but I've seen people putting that squad with Vader Jedi Hunter or with Cad Bane's box, or someone even tried him with Anakin. So that's just a really, really solid box. And so that could obviously be paired with Asajj Ventress and her squad, which has Kalani and the B1 battle droids. So Count Dooku brings a lot of force, doesn't really use much. He gives some mobility to the team, giving out a dash to a Separatist Alliance character as well as himself, and just very defensive and hard to move off of points through attacks. He also has the reactive ability if a primary or secondary unit is wounded, then you refresh to force. So on top of bringing 4 force already, and then a Separatist Alliance supporting unit may dash or make a 5-dice attack. So reacting to someone being wounded can be very strong. And the only part of that ability that looks for a Separatist Alliance character is for that dash or 5-dice attack. So you could just bring the Magna Guard and not really care what's in the other strike or in the other squad, because it's just when a primary or secondary unit on your team is wounded. It doesn't have to be Separatist Alliance. Jango Fett, considered, I think the best second, or one of the best secondaries units out there. He has a lot of mobility. He has a way of moving your opponent without doing an attack. And he also has a reactive ability that has the potential to stop their activation before they've been able to do anything in not so fast. So very strong. And also he also has potential force refresh if he wounds a primary or secondary unit. So a squad that brings lots of force and also has lots of ways to refresh that force. And the Magna Guards, they use none, basically. If they're wounded, the protection protocol starts to cost a force, but that ability gives them a full advance out of activation when a Separatist primary unit makes a move action. So they're a very strong unit as well. Very, 2 shoves on the first 2 steps, and very good expertise on both sides. Now, I tend to swap the Magna Guards into the other squad because Asajj is a not as defensive primary as Count Dooku. Count Dooku doesn't really need the extra bodyguard die or forgetting cover 1 there, and you really don't need to be diverting attacks away from Count Dooku through their intercede. So really better, in my opinion, to have them protecting your not as defensive unit like Asajj or Grievous. So the Grievous squad pack is another one that could be paired to either to replace either of these squads, really. I think that still works quite well, although I think a lot of people would say that the Count Dooku squad is the stronger one. Asajj is a bit on the force hungry side, but with the droids that she brings, they barely use any force, if at all. So bringing her in droids list allows her to be able to use the force that she wants to be using, to be very mobile, doing the force push for, again, displacing your opponent without using dice or having to attack them. And she does have another source of refresh, although that's only if she wounds a primary unit, which you're probably not banking on, but it's a nice bonus there. If it's a secondary unit, then you can do an advance or jump, so that's nice. But either way, whatever you wound, then you can get some recovers. So those are kind of the 3 teams or types that came right out of the gate, and there's of course more mixing and matching that you can do as you expand. Now, Vader, Jedi Hunter, and Obi-Wan out of hiding. They came in a diorama box, which I don't have, but those are both units that are very flexible as well. They don't rely on a lot of synergy, and they can make strong pairings with a lot of people. Looking at some of the other squads that I have made, after playing Separatists for quite a while, and like I said, kind of just making different pairs of those 3 squads, taking any of the the three squads and pairing them together, or throwing Lord Maul in there for one of the other primaries. I think I did that pairing with Grievous, so Lord Maul and Grievous for a while. Then I wanted to come back to Republic because I liked their play style. I just realized the force economy issues and some of the units that were not as strong. So a ways into the game, I'm not sure if it was October or November, but I started using this squad. So this squad leans into, or this strike team leans into General Kenobi's hunkers and being very defensive and able to jump back onto points if they're not wounded, being really hard to get off of objectives. So it has that squad that I mentioned, Kenobi, Rex, and the 212th clone troopers. And then, although I actually switched these around in the end, I put Barriss with Kenobi because she's faster than he is, and Rex with Maul. And the thing about Barriss is that she's very fast. She's another force-hungry unit if you rely on her force push, but she can be very disruptive and do a lot of displacement on her turn, because if she gets an attack off, she's got plenty of shoves, a reposition on one, and Maul similarly. He's got an extra advance ability, the diceless displacement, and shove reposition on 2 steps in Sinister Cunning. So those were kind of the 2 major playmakers, and then everyone else has movement on their activation, so he can have a jump. He has the jump from Patience as well. Each of the clones has defensive maneuver, which can give an extra dash. Rex can give out a dash and as out of activation movement to anyone except for Maul. And then they all also have brothers in arms, which gives them steadfast, so once again making them difficult to move off of points. Hunkering up Barriss helps make her not die as quickly. So with a hunker, and if she's on a building getting cover, then all of a sudden she's rolling 6 dice on defense instead of 4, and also potentially getting the reposition off of her defensive expertise. But if that doesn't happen, then you could spend the hunker with Kenobi as well to dash back onto the point. So very much a defensive playing list, not doing a lot of wounding, just relying on spending force for extra movement, and then Maul doesn't use any force but can make big plays, so he was often being Shatterpointed just mainly based on force economy and trying to make sure that something is happening on every activation. And he could spend his damage instead of force on both his activation and the Shatterpoint. Now, a combination that's strong between Kenobi and Clone Commandos is the fact that they have scale, which means that any of the dashes they get out of activation, whether it's the dash back from the hunker or getting a dash from Rex, anything like that, can be turned into a climb. So they're not limited to just staying at the same elevation. they can actually climb up on any of those dashes, again, making it difficult to displace them in a way that they can't get back where they need to go. Now this involves the core box for Maul and Rex, Kenobi's box for him in the 212th, and then Luminara's box for Barriss and the Clone Commandos. Now, at the last tournament, I brought this strike team. So it is trying out the Dathomirians and with Lord Maul in there, and filling out the team with Jango Fett and the Mandalorian Super Commandos. And so there's a video of that team in action. But basically we have Mother Talzin being the reactive. She's reacting to wounds. This list actually has 3 sources of dice list displacement, but only the out of activation movement is quite limited. She can give out a dash on her activation, and Savage can get a dash if he's within 3 of a Separatist Alliance or Dathomirian primary unit when they start their activation. So yeah, out of activation movement, very limited, which is definitely a weakness of this list. But again, everyone has pretty high mobility other than Talzin. She has no extra movement on her turn, so you're relying on using those dashes from her allies being wounded to get her into position. Jango, again, quite mobile, jump, and there are multiple ways to get jumps. Mandalorians have a jump. The Night Sisters have a jump. Maul, of course, with this extra advance, and then Savage with some access to out of activation dashes, but also he has Furious Rush, which gives him a dash, or if he's injured, that can be an advance, although more expensive at that point. With this list, I brought shifting priorities because there is a decent amount of out of activation movement that you can get off the start, and allowing you to be able to move a lot of people forward, and with the jumps as well, kind of guaranteeing that you can get to the middle objectives more easily, and hopefully more easily than your opponent. Now, what I have thought about is swapping in Bo-Katan into this list to have some more out of activation movement, because that's lacking. And I think many people would prefer to remove Savage, but I actually have been enjoying playing him. I think that he can provide actually a good counter to a couple of units that would like to react to being attacked, because he does have his damage track here, and he has no way of displacing people, so he kind of needs to go for the wound, but also he can go this way and just lay on a bunch of conditions, especially strain, which means that your opponent has to think twice about whether or not to use their reactive abilities and set off that extra damage. So I might swap Bo-Katan in for Jango to get extra out of activation movement and some synergy there. But who knows, I might try that once and then swap Jango back in for Savage or something instead. But these are some hopefully some list building ideas to get you started. If you want a general sense um, of you know why you would bring how many of certain types of units, there's some good articles from Bombad Tactics, who's part of now 5th Trooper. And if you want kind of a general sense for list building, but hopefully these lists will kind of help you get started. You can play around with that, see what you like, and go on from there.